Hello, everyone. I would say welcome back to Britton Social Club. It's been a few weeks since last episode where it was me, Raph, and of course, one uh, Max Garfield who hung out with us for a good little bit. Hope everyone's doing well. It's been it's been a very long week, I will say. But we're here. Hope everyone's doing okay. Uh, but yes, this is Britain's Social Club. This is where we hang out, have a break after a long week in the work arena, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so we're doing that. Hope everyone's doing well. Uh, Turn that on. Oh, hello everyone. Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. Forgot to turn my on-air light on. Hello, Tharnal. How are you? Hope you're doing well. Bibliophile Reads is also here. Hello there. Hope everything's going well on your end. But yeah, it's been a few weeks since I last did this. Stuff just kept getting in the way, like my grandmother's birthday, and then I recorded my discussion with Carlos and Yolanda about the Searcher, so I couldn't do stream then, and it was Mother's Day. Just a lot of fun. Just a lot of fun stuff that kept getting in the way. But I'm here now. So, hopefully everyone's doing well. And if you want to share what you've been reading recently, feel free to. So, yeah, there you go. It's been crazy. Last week was quite crazy. Thursday especially, I had to work basically all day, and it was not fun. I shall note. I guess that's why they call it work. A bad joke perhaps, but hopefully you guys get what I mean. Barnell says I am 71% into the Dead Zone. All right, yeah, that's pretty. It's a pretty good book. That's the Stephen King one. Yeah, it's a good one. Kind of oddly prescient considering the villain of the story, at least in my opinion. I wouldn't call it one of his best, but it's a good one. It's a good one to read. Movie's also good too. Also, hello, Raph. How you doing? Started Gardens of the Moon. Good luck. That book is a tad crazy, we'll just say. Or at least it was for me. That was an interesting experience. And Mac is here. Hello, Mac. Yes, happy Norwegian Constitution Day. We were talking about that last night, or at least last night my time, before you had to go because you wanted to get some sleep, which is totally fine. No, it's funny, Tharnall, around like 2017 or 18, I was reading a bunch of Stephen King. I was eating it up as much as I could. I read a bunch of his stuff, or no, it was around the time like Stranger Things came out for the first time, so maybe it was 2015. But anyway, I got really into the like Stephen King mythos, and it was a lot of fun. And I read a bunch of his books, like it's kind of hard for me to pick my favorite, honestly, between 11/22/63 and It. I think both of them are they're just perfect in my opinion. They're both just great. I don't know if they're perfect. I'm sure they have flaws in them. I know so. I know It definitely has flaws, but I just think it's like those two I think are the best books that Stephen King has ever written. So there you go on that. But good luck with the rest of the Dead Zone. It's a good book. It's not too bad. If anyone wants to know what I'm reading, some of you probably know already, at least some of them. I am reading The Odyssey, which is I'm doing as a buddy read on my Discord server. So if you want to join us, it's linked down below. It's under the title The Odyssey Read Along. I read this every Saturday is what I'm trying to do, and I share my thoughts on the Discord server, which is called The Odyssey Read Along. So that's always fun. But yes, it's my Discord server. I link it down below. This is still really good. I really do like the Odyssey quite a bit. Still holds up really. There's a lot of stuff in here that still works in the modern day. I mean, sure, there's some stuff that some people might kind of scoff at a bit because, it's you know, sexist and all that. I'm sure, I'm sure someone will find a problem with this. It's really good. The impact that this story has had on epic fantasy as a whole it cannot be overstated. I mean, if you could ask me, this is kind of the first epic fantasy story. So, yeah. But anyway, if you want to read it along with me, you can. I have the Fagles version, but I'm not really too picky on which version of the Odyssey you read. I have the Fagles one because it's very like rhythmic and poetic without being super showy. I didn't want to get the Emily Wilson version because I'll admit the language just sounded way too plain for my taste. I feel like that kind of does a disservice to the poetry, the language. I will be starting Saint of the Narrow Street by William Boyle. I heard a lot of people were really liking this book. So, yeah, hopefully I will get started with that this evening, which, moving on with that. Well, I know you don't really care for Stephen King, Raph, so you know what? Do whatever you want, Raph. I know you're probably just trying to get a rise out of me. Anyway, next book I have reading is Gloriana, and Gloriana is really great. This is a really excellent book so far. I have just been having an absolute blast with this. It's really interesting seeing Michael Moorcock doing such a refined piece of work. I won't really go too deeply into it, but if Moorcock plays his cards right, I think I will go down and say that Gloriana is his best book. It's so good, and yeah, it's just really it has a lot to say, but it doesn't feel super, it doesn't feel super preachy about it, or well, maybe that's not the right word, but it's a great book is what I'm trying to get at. Really has a lot to say about England and mythologies and performance. It's just really great. I'm definitely going to make a video about it at some point. And whenever I finish it and do my, wrap up video, I'm definitely going to have a lot to say about it. So keep your eye out for whenever I finish Gloriana. I don't know if I'm going to do it this month. Well, I hope so. Because my reading has just been absolutely skewed because work has just been absolutely insane on my end. But alas. I'm also reading Doom Patrol. Morrison-a-thon continues. I am reading Doom Patrol. And I probably shouldn't have shown this cover, but yeah, it's too late now. We're not really we're not a family-friendly channel. A lot of people call this the weirdest superhero comic of all time. I could definitely see where they're coming from. It's definitely quite out there. It starts out as kind of a regular superhero book with kind of a weird edge, but then as Morrison gets more confident, he's just throwing absolutely insane curveballs at the audience. So yeah, Doom Patrol is crazy. But I'm digging it. So it's not all bad. I think it's not going to go down as one of my favorites of his work probably because I find stuff like Animal Man is a bit more controlled personally. Probably won't go down as one of my favorite Morrison works, but it is really fun seeing him just throw all these crazy ideas at the audience, and that's always a fun thing. And of course, I am reading Planetary. I'm reading that with Joe Byrne. You're probably going to be discussing that sometime in the near future, probably towards the end of the month. I'm actually got another person who I hope will be joining us. It's actually Cody Walker, who did he edited this book, but it is Keeping the World Strange, a Planetary Guide. And this is just where he and a bunch of other people wrote essays about Well, Planetary. Um, yeah, no, Planetary's really great so far. Really interesting book. Definitely will probably go down as one of Warren Ellis's best books. Um, I know he's kind of his work has somewhat been tainted in recent years because of we'll just say bad decisions he's made, but Planetary still holds up very well. I have a much better appreciation for it this time around than when I first read it around 2018 or so. So yeah, but yeah, well, this isn't Planetary. It's just a book about Planetary. But hopefully, I'll get Cody on. He did say yes, so I'll have to figure out a time for when we can talk about well, Planetary. So there you go. Put it up now. So yeah, that's basically all I've been reading. I've just been kind of overwhelming myself, if you will. A friend suggestion. The hell is this? I don't even know this person. I started The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, but I had a really bad reading slump in 2020, so I kind of just gave up on it. But yeah, I know it's kind of one of his like overlooked books. There's going to be a couple that get overlooked in the in the in the fold. That's the word, isn't it? I don't know. Anyway, that's all I'm reading at the moment. I am reading, or I will start reading. So I'm gonna read. I'm gonna start Saint of the Narrow Street this evening. So yeah, that should be fun. Yeah, not too much else to talk about. I'm gonna try and find an audio version of Gloriana because I think Raph would really enjoy Gloriana. So I'll just say that. Oh, Joe's here. I was just actually just talking about you because I'm reading Planetary right now. And I got someone else for the conversation, but you know we won't go too deeply into that. What is Saint of the Narrow Street all about? Well, let me see if I can read the back here. See what it says. That is not at all. It just has praise from people like Jordan Harper, Ace Adkins, Eli Craner, S.A. Cosby. I said Jordan Harper already, didn't I? I don't know. Okay, so I'll just read the blurb that it has on here, and hopefully it'll entice you. Gravesend, Brooklyn, 1986. Riza Franzone lives in a ground floor apartment on Saint of the Narrow Street with her bad seed husband Severio and their 8-month-old baby Fabrizio. Fabrizio? I don't know. I'm not Italian. On the night Riza's younger sister Guelia moves in to recover from a bad breakup, a fateful accident occurs. Riza, boiled over with anger and fear, strikes a drunk, erratic Sav with a cast iron pan, killing him on the spot. The sisters are left with a choice: notify the authorities and make a case for self-defense, or bury the man's body and go on with their lives as best they can. In a moment of panic, in the late hours of the night, they call upon Sav's childhood friend, the sweet, loyal Christopher Chooch Gardini, to help them, hoping they could trust him to carry a secret like this. Over the vast expanse of the next 18 years, life goes on in the working-class Italian neighborhood of Gravesend as Riza, Coelia, Cooch, and eventually Fabrizio grapple with what happened that night. Standout work, character-driven crime fiction from celebrated author of the form. Saint of the Narrow Street is a searing and richly drawn novel about the choices we make and how they shape our lives. So, yeah, I guess that's what it's about. Sounds interesting. It actually sounds like something Dennis Lehane might have written in his day. Well, in his day. His last book came out like 2 years ago. Planetary is indeed fantastic. It's a really good read. So Joe, have you gotten to the issue where it's the kung fu? It's kind of the riff on the kung fu mystical martial arts films, because I thought you would really like that issue. I'm really bad at buddy reading because I'm really bad at like reaching out to people and going like, "Oh, what are you thinking of the book?" And I was talking to Joe the other day, and I was like, So hey Joe, where are you at with this? Because I'm probably gonna see if I can finish it on a um probably tomorrow if I can manage. And he's like, "Oh, I'm on issue 23." I'm like, "Are you fucking serious? I'm only on like issue 19." Damn, dude. Well, it's only like 27 issues long. So basically, Joe's almost done with it, and I'm just like, feel like a doofus over here. But one of the nice things about Planetary is that even though there is a kind of overarching story, most of the stories that you read are mostly standalone. So you can kind of pick up an issue, read it, have a good time, and understand what he's getting at. Um, it's a good time. Uh, it is one that it's one of those books that like comic nerds really get a lot out of because it's very much a commentary on comics and all the fun stuff that comics can do when they're done well. Anyway, I don't want to say too much about Planetary because again, I'm going to have a conversation with Joe and Cody probably towards the end of the month, so we'll see. Um That's true. I'm not saying like I said, I'm not trying to say there's not an overarching story, but I am saying if anyone wants to pick it up, many of the stories are standalone, and you can kind of read them and have a good time with them. You'll probably get more out of it if you're like into like comic book history and like really enjoy comic books. Um, I really like that issue, the Hong Kong action movie issue. I like that one. That's a really good one. Though I was reading Planetary and I'm like, if Dan Harmon and crew were not stealing from this when making Rick and Morty, I would be absolutely surprised. I don't know if I believe them, honestly, because yeah. Um I agree that it definitely contains all other comic stories inside of it. It's again, it's very much a commentary on comics. Kind of in the way that something like Watchmen is, except it's not specifically aimed at the superhero genre, though there is kind of commentary on the superhero genre. So yeah, um, good stuff overall. And Alan Moore liked it, so if that entices you, Alan Moore liked it. He wrote the foreword of the edition that I'm reading. Um, I'll admit though, I didn't really care for the authority issue. It kind of feels like two stories kind of slapped into one, and just doesn't really come together. And also, I just don't give a shit about the authority. I don't really like the authority. So yeah, there's that. But I am looking forward to reading the end of it and seeing how Warren Ellis ties it off. Because one of my problems with Warren Ellis, I mean, as a writer anyway, as a person, I won't go into that rabbit hole, but as a writer, he tends to be lazy. Like he often will start something, then he'll get bored with it, and then he'll just bail when he gets bored with it. Now, Planetary, he actually finished. It's one of the comics he actually, took the time and finished the damn thing. So I'm curious to see how he ties it off. But yeah, yeah. Sometimes Ellis frustrates me because he'll start something and it's really cool, and then he just goes like, I'm bored, and then he abandons it, and it just irritates me a bit. But anyway, Mac has been busy. Again, Mac always picks just like the most obscure. Oh, you love the I'm kind of surprised, Joe. I I mean, I probably shouldn't comment because I haven't read a lot of the Authority, but I just kind of, what, I won't go into it. But yeah, no, you'll probably like the Authority issue, or maybe you've already read it. 'Cause you said we're on issue 23. I read, um, I'm like, and the thing about the Authority issue of Planetary, it's like if they had just like told that story, which is basically like a riff on H.P. Lovecraft, like that would have been fine. Like I'd have read that. I mean, I don't want to go into the H.P. Lovecraft rabbit hole today, but there's a lot of rabbit holes. Um, but it was a fun issue. It's a fun issue. That's a fun idea. I think Warren Ellis could say a lot about it, but he kind of combines it with the Planetary, or not planetary, with the Authority, and the Authority's just doing other things, punching like space aliens, which that's always fun. But yeah, just kind of a letdown of an issue, honestly. Maybe I'll have to read the Warren Ellis Authority original, like 12 issues. I just kind of, I don't know, it just kind of feels like poor man's Watchmen to me, but I could be wrong. And Warren Ellis is a good writer, despite my frustrations with his style sometimes. I feel like Planetary is a bit more of a refined piece from one Warren Ellis. It's not necessarily I don't know if it's gonna top. It's gonna have to do a lot to top like Transmetropolitan for me, because Transmet is still my favorite. It's kind of just that raw Ellis id just on the page. I really like that. It's also really angry and political, and as someone who tends to get angry and political sometimes, I kind of dig that. That's why I always recommend it to Raph, because he's kind of thrives on getting angry and political, but he's blind, so it's just kind of. It just sucks, Wish Raph wasn't blind, but we have the cards that were dealt. That sounds bad. I don't want to sound like I'm dissing on Raph's blindness. That I'm just saying it sometimes really sucks. So I'm like, hey, you should read Planetary, or not Planetary, or well, maybe he could read Planetary. I think he'd like Planetary too. But hey, you should read Transmet. I think he would like it. It's really angry and political. I know how angry and political you get sometimes. But it's a comic book, it has images. So it's just kind of like, well, shit, Speaking of the devil, and he shall appear, Raph. Well,
hello.
The bottom half of his face, though. But hello, Raph.
This should be better.
Yeah, there you go. I can see better now.
Yeah, I can still fuck around with that camera a bit. Maybe that. Who knows?
Funny. I was about to say it's like Beetlejuice. He appears when I say his name 3 times. But anyway,
yeah, you better be careful with that. That's a dangerous power.
Yeah, I was just ranting about why I can't recommend you Planetary, or not Planetary again, Transmetropolitan, because you're blind.
I know.
But I think you would like Planetary too.
I'm pretty sure like my former flatmate read all of Transmet and told me a lot about it. So I'm aware of it, and I'm aware that this is definitely the kind of thing I would like. But what can you do?
But yeah. But Raph, you've been busy recently. You've been cranking out a bunch of videos ranting about BookTube, and also putting out some book discussions. So yeah,
I'm finally back talking about books, and
had a concussion. Hope you're feeling better from that, by the way.
No, I did not actually have a full-on concussion. I just got checked for concussion because we do have like healthcare, so that is kind of covered by healthcare to make sure that you don't have a concussion. So I got like a CT, and then they decided that it's fine. And yeah, healthcare is in fact fine.
I said that must be nice.
yeah, healthcare is nice. But yeah, so they did that, and yeah. Now I just have to deal with like the next knocked out tooth for a while, and that's that. But it's not as visible, I think. So I guess I'm not as.
You know what's funny? My dad just got his tooth like right there removed, so now he kind of looks like Alfred E. Newman a little bit. I'm just kind of like, oh Lord, it's kind of like Raph. He's had that tooth issue, though he didn't knock it out. He just was eating, and it just was like, and he had to get it out, so he has to pay a bunch of money, and they'll put a fake one in, which he's very excited about.
Teeth issues suck, though. They're just like really frustrating.
They do, yeah. It's not fun. It's like when you go in to get like a filling, and then when the like numbing stuff wears off, and it just feels like you got punched in the mouth. Yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah. Well, hello, Joe. So I went to the hospital for that. Then I discharged myself from the hospital because I got bored in the hospital.
I like that. You just leave. It's like, I'm...
No, like the thing is that in Germany they don't discharge you on the weekend. They discharge you on Friday or on Monday. And I got in like Saturday night
Oh,
on to Sunday, and then like in the morning, the doctor looked at me. He's like, "Well, you can go tomorrow morning." And I'm like, "Fine. So what about today?" And it's like, "Well, I can't officially let you go on Sunday, but a friend, and this was not close to where I live, but where close to where my friend lives, or where my friend's parents live, or mother lives at this point. And he was driving back to where he works, which is past where I live. So he was like, I can take you by car home, and if you can get out on Sunday. And that was like much smarter than like wait until Monday morning and then get a bus to the train station, get a train to the next train station, get another train, get another bus, and so forth. So I figured like it's easier to do that this way and discharge myself. And I can read Antonio Gramsci at home or in the at the hospital, like, doesn't matter that much.
but yeah, you talked about Fonda Lee's new book, which kind of surprised me. I didn't really think she would have interested you any other way.
Yeah, I realized she doesn't really. I was like, the whole like whatever it was called, Greenbone Saga, never interested me. Like anything people told me about it was like, I don't care about it. But I've been reading a lot of like cyberpunk recently, and I was like, oh well, it's got samurai in space with like a cyberpunkish theme. Maybe I can actually understand what makes Fonda Lee good. And now I know that it isn't good.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think she. I mean, I read Jade City. I'm gonna read or not. Is it Jade City? Is that what it's called? I can't.
I think Jade City is the first one, and then it's Jade War and Jade Legacy.
Thank you. You have a better memory of this than I do at the moment. But yeah, no, I'm actually hoping to read that whole trilogy. I liked the first book, but I could definitely see why you probably wouldn't care for it. It's not like, saying anything radical. It's kind of like if you're a fan of The Godfather, you'll know what you're expecting.
That was kind of my problem with Last Contract of Isako at the end of the day, because like her the personal plot around Isako and Rain Cobb, that the other like other former sort of like corporate samurai that she kind of works with in that, like that personal story, that is really well done. Like she's really good at that personal stuff, and like having this slightly older woman that really struggles with bonding with her daughter and all of that kind of crap, all of that is wonderful. But when it comes to trying to figure out how to do like a corporate samurai story in a cyberpunk setting, that's where a lot of things fall flat, because you lose the punk aspect very, very quickly. And that's kind of where the problems with this one sort of start for me, where I'm like, yeah, this could have been like a really nice contemporary literary fiction about, people growing old and corporate jobs sucking, but instead it's sort of like also John Wick in space, and it just doesn't come together fully. I think it's still highly entertaining. Like I give her that. Like it's highly entertaining.
Yeah, I liked Jade City a lot. It was actually well paced, and unlike many other fantasy book ones, stuff actually happens that is consequential to everything moving forward, which is kind of a frustration at times with book ones, even those that I like, such as The Blade itself. It's not a setup book, yay! So good job on that, Fonda Lee. But yeah, no, again, if you're like a fan of The Godfather, like I am, you'll know what you're expecting.
No, she's a very competent writer. I'll give her that. I just there's some issues there. One thing that I didn't put into the video because I didn't want to get it too nitpicky, but that's the thing that I found really interesting. At some point, she talks about someone being so caught up in his role, like a character actor, like a method actor, and I'm like, the entire fucking book, you have never talked about movies or television or acting. The only thing of culture that shows up is like fashion, like high fashion clothing articles, and that's it. So that's bad editing. Like if you want to make that point about character, method acting and stuff like that, then I don't know, make it a point, like mention it from time to time that your characters do actually love to watch, I don't know, old movies from the 2000s or the 1990s or 1980s or whatever. Just drop a couple of hints so that that comparison makes sense, because otherwise everyone's like, you're only banking on the fact that your readers know what method acting is. And if they don't know, because, they're all Gen Z and have no idea what that means, you're kind of fucked. Or find a different fucking metaphor that ties into the whole clothing thing. You're a writer. It's your job, right? I don't know, and that's why I'm not an editor, I guess.
Yeah, my it's funny you say that because again, I'm reading Gloriana at the moment. It's one of the kind of major themes. It's about like performance versus reality. But again, for some reason, Michael Moorcock doesn't have as many audiobooks. I don't know why.
Mm. Well, Thornell, I'm definitely interested in a book about teenage pregnant girls that make deals with witches. I'm reading right now We Dance Upon Demons by Vaishnavi Patel, which is about a woman working in an abortion clinic and getting divine powers from, I guess, Vishnu, and fighting
Gotta love
uh,
Vishnu. He always comes in at the right time.
and fighting against people protesting her abortion clinic. So I guess I'm already in that mind space, in that headspace. It's a really good book. It's really angry, and it's has a long dedication to all the people killed by anti-abortion terrorists over the last couple of decades. So yeah,
Doesn't sound
angry
like
book.
my type of thing, but all right. Yeah.
It's brand new, and it's interesting because it also looks at like sort of like how much of this is sort of like tied to a specific form of Christianity, which is why the main character. What's the big deal here, right? So
Skipped out a little on your end.
no, I'm sorry. Yeah, I said that it's interesting because it does look at like how much of the specific U.S. abortion discourse is tied to evangelical Christianity, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Continue. No, just finish your thought.
Yeah, and the main character being Hindu does sort of like comes at this from the outside and doesn't necessarily understand the religious dimension of, or the background of people with that religious sort of like conviction that are very much anti-abortion and so forth, because it's like, well, not in our culture, so
I'll just I was wondering if you were talking about the Grady Hendrix book. I don't know. I own one of his books. Hold on, let me find it. Where I had it.
I've heard the title. I've never read it though.
It's the southern lady. It's the vampire one. I'll just say that. I'm sure you know what that is. But I got that, and I don't know. It just seems kind of gimmick. It's kind of like Dungeon Crawler Carl. It just sounds kind of gimmicky to me. But I could be wrong on that. I've been wrong before.
I didn't
think Joe Abercrombie's work was going to be anything special, but then I read it and I really enjoyed it, and I think it's really good. So there's that. Like I said,
and I did read Where the Axe is Buried by Ray Naylor, which was interesting.
It's like, hold on, this is gonna drive me fucking crazy. Did I put it over on the new shelf? No, I did. Yeah, it's Southern Book Club's Guide to Killing Vampires. I'm not really into vampires, honestly, either. So it's kind of two things going against it for me. It's like, oh man, I don't know. You know what I've been thinking about recently, Raph? The idea of like anti-consumerism. I've been kind of thinking about it because apparently Dungeon Crawler Carl is kind of poking at like consumerism and stuff like that. I haven't read any of these books, so I don't know. I'm totally talking.
At that point, you just need to ask yourself, how much Dungeon Crawler Carl merch is he selling at the same time?
Exactly. That's exactly what I saw a dude literally wearing a t-shirt. Which, don't get me wrong, I love like t-shirts are like the only like shirts that I like wearing. I'm a big t-shirt guy. But sometimes it kind of makes you wonder a little bit. It's kind of like, isn't that kind of defeating the point a little bit? I've noticed that happen with a lot of like radical artists throughout history, or even radicals in general. I mean, you see people with like Che Guevara shirts all over the place.
I mean, to be fair, Che Guevara is not exactly the person who decided to put his face on shirts, right?
This is true, yeah.
But I see what you mean. There's a really good part once again in that amazing story collection, Burning Girls and Other Stories by Veronica Shanos, that deals with that, which is the Sleeping Beauty retelling of the story of Sid and Nancy, and it ends with how their suffering is now also commercialized by wearing t-shirts with Sid and Nancy on them. Yeah. Excellent collection. You should really read that.
I mean, I should note, I'm not saying I'm an anti-consumerist or anything, but I do find that kind of cycle really fascinating.
Yeah, that does not surprise me. I know that Jesse Gender has spoken about loving Dungeon Crawler Carl, and I just can't get myself to actually try Dungeon Crawler Carl. I don't know. A lot of people who I really, really massively distrust when it comes to takes on literature really love Dungeon Crawler Carl, and I just can't get over the name. I'm sorry, I'm German. Carl is like the most stupid
Is
one
that
of
like
the
the
sort of like
John? Is that like the John of Germany?
very very close to like the John of Germany. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, no, and again, I'm not against like merch. I'm just saying I just find that really fascinating. I mean, I'm not saying like Dungeon Crawler Carl is like super radical or anything, but I just think that's interesting how that happens.
Yeah, I mean, part of that is that it's very difficult to sort of like if you want to get your anti-consumerist message out through the channels that are available to you right now, then you have to do those through methods that are at least capitalism adjacent, and at that point, depending on what kind of deals you have to make to get that stuff out, you may have to actually sign away your merch rights, or at least make sure that if you don't actually do the merch yourself, your publisher doesn't do it instead of you, and so forth. Like, there is all kinds of stuff tied into that I think we often sort of like overlook in that regard. So there is a chance that it's just that, or Matt Dinneman just doesn't actually think too much about it, which is also possible, right? Like,
Well, I mean, it's funny because Matt Diniaman just followed me randomly on Twitter one day. I'm just like, oh shit, the Dungeon Crawler Carl guy just followed me on Twitter. That's weird. Maybe I'll have to have him on my show someday. But I don't know. You see, it's kind of funny. I was talking about this with my friend Jason on the Discord server he has, because that's generally one of the few Discords I really go on and talk on.
yeah.
He had surprisingly didn't care for Dungeon Crawler Carl, because I mean it's kind of hard to find stuff he does like. But yeah, I was kind of like, yeah, doesn't it sound kind of gimmicky? And people were like, yeah, I got a couple of interesting answers out of it.
But what I find so interesting about all of this is I'm still like, I don't know if Matt Dinneman has ever, but the acronym DCC is like the one for the tabletop role-playing game series Dungeon Crawl Classics, and those guys, I think it was still Goodman Games, had a series of like D&D third edition adventures in the early 2000s called X Crawl, where the setup was that in a future reality TV show, you're a dungeon crawler in like a reality TV dungeon crawl version, which is so close to the Dungeon Crawler Carl setup that I just wonder how much of this is deliberate on Matt Dinneman's, side there.
Yeah, I'm just kind of, I don't know. I'm kind of afraid it'll turn into like that Ready Player One thing where it brings up this interesting idea and then just does nothing substantial with it.
But isn't like Ready Player One just like 80s nostalgia in a Snow Crash light metaverse, and that's it?
Pretty much, yeah.
By a really creepy dude.
I don't know if he's creepy because I haven't read too much.
Yeah, he is.
Him, but
he's definitely creepy. Has written some very troubling poetry about women that is creepy. I don't know.
I don't know. I haven't read any of his poetry. I generally don't like slam poetry because a lot of it is really stupid. But that's a lot of things.
Yeah. Yes, Thornell, I too really like Derry. Unfortunately, Derry also really likes the Dresden Files books, and those suck. So I don't know if I trust her judgment on.
I was about to say, yeah. What about Derry? She's cool. I mean, I'm not saying she's very excitable, but come on now.
No, I'm not saying. No, I'm not saying everyone who loves Dungeon Crawler Carl is someone I distrust. I say a lot of people who have been very vocal about their love for Dungeon Crawler Carl are people that whose like judgment when it comes to books I don't trust. There are obviously also people who generally have like good taste or like whose taste aligns with mine, who also love it. So maybe there is something there, and who knows.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I'm just not interested in lit RPGs. I'm just like, can it just be a video game? Like, Like it just seems more. It's kind of what Matt said, from Matt on Books. He was like, "Yeah, I kind of just want to play the video game." And I'm like, "Just play a video game?" And I'm, yeah, yeah. I terribly said it. He said it a lot better than I did, but generally agree
Yeah.
with Matt's. One of the things I would say I agree with Matt on is that like, it sounds like a video game. I'd rather just play the video game. Like I want to when I read a book, I want to read a book. I don't know. I have a lot of friends who like lit RPGs, and God bless them. I'm not saying it's. I mean that's true. I'm not saying it's. I'm not saying it's not more expensive to produce. I'm just saying, I don't know. You know what? I don't even know what I'm saying.
No, but
Oh.
I get what you mean. There's like I'm not interested in knowing the stats, and like it's a general sort of like thing. And I found this interesting with in a sense also with the last contract of Isako, because I'm pretty sure that a lot of people who read it will really love it for the world building, and it's also like so like leveled through. Now, of course, I mean it's partly because it's all like in like a corporate environment, and corporate environments have been gamified up to a point as well. So I do kind of get that, but like the general way that people talk about characters in fantasy or science fiction universes, basically already in game stats, whether it's not just in your progression fantasy and then obviously your lit RPGs, but even in other stuff, it's like, yeah, but this character can do this and this character can do that. They have this specific powers. Like, this is not a game. This is a story. They can do whatever the fucking whatever the fuck the author wants them to do. That's the rule. And anything beyond that, just like, I don't know, it feels restrictive, but I sometimes worry that that's kind of what people want out of their books, to have the world their book is set in restrictive enough that they can predict what will happen next, and then complain about spoilers nevertheless. And I'm like, all right. I
Yeah,
guess.
no, I've never really. I don't know. I've just been kind of. I've just been kind of not interested. I don't know. Um. I don't know. I'm kind of wary of Fond du Lee's new book because I'm always kind of annoyed with. I like to call it popcorn science fiction, which is basically just look at all this cool technology. Let's have some fun with it. Don't say anything interesting or yada yada. Kind of like what Andy Weir did with The Martian, which I like The Martian. I think it's a pretty solid sci-fi book. But yeah, I like science fiction. It's cerebral, bit more cerebral. That's more penetrating, if you will. That didn't come out right, but hopefully you get what I mean, Raph.
I haven't read any
Hopefully you
Andy
catch
Weir,
my
so
drift.
yeah, I know. I haven't read any Andy Weir. So I can't comment on that. I do think that Last Contract of Isako is worth reading because it does do interesting things. And as I said, like the 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 character story is really good.
I
That
was
part
gonna
is really
say
well done.
I did like Jade City, so I'm not against reading it, but I'm just kind of I don't know. Science fiction is one of my favorite genres. Sometimes to the point where I'm just like I'm super critical of it because I have a particular kind of sci-fi that I really like. So
Yeah. And yes, Ori, it is exactly it's Sanderson stuff, and Sanderson. I've said this so many times in the past. Like, Sanderson clearly has been very much inspired, and his style has been very much informed by video games in a lot of ways that previous authors are not. It's like, the standard example I always bring up is when he takes over Wheel of Time. The action scenes suddenly become three-dimensional, where before then, like, everyone is just always on the same plane, and when Sanderson takes over, suddenly people are flying around and shooting and running up and climbing up on like balustrades and shit, and shooting down and jumping down and so forth. And you can see that is that is the way to imagine combat. That is that has been that comes from someone who has played a bunch of shooters and a bunch of like action video games and thinks about it in that sort of like three-dimensional space in a way that Robert Jordan clearly didn't. And there's obviously more of that kind of stuff in there. A very gamified approach to world building in a lot of ways, which is interesting because on the other hand, you have like, obviously you have the Malazan Book of the Fallen, which comes out of like a actual like tabletop RPG world and so forth, and it still doesn't actually feel that way, and it's very happy to bend the rules whenever the story demands it.
Yeah, I'm kind of on DJ Butler's level. I think the one thing that Brandon Sanderson has done that has kind of hindered fantasy is the hard magic system. I can't stand them anymore. I don't know. I don't want to get into that rabbit hole because that could be a Fate of Fantasy episode on why I think that's an awful idea. But
No, I don't know. I have conflicted views on Brandon Sanderson, and at some point I will get to them in detail.
Yeah, you were making a whole Mormon video because inspired by him.
There's an entire project there with a Mormon video and then a video for each of his novels where I go back and show how his cultural Mormon upbringing, not just like actual Mormon belief, but also like the culture and so forth, have influenced his approach to writing fantasy and show up in individual parts of his novels. And some of that is good and some of that is bad. Like a good part, for example, I think is that something I really find interesting is that, like, because of like Mormon specific approach to like families back from the days of your plural marriages and stuff like that, but like and so forth, is that you have like a very specific approach to like patchwork families where it's totally fine to marry someone who already has kids from either a previous marriage or usually a previous marriage or whatever, and have these like mixed families with like different children from different parents and so forth in one large family. And that is something that obviously shows up in Sanderson's novels a lot, even in Elantris. It's like a core topic and comes up later again. I think that you would not actually get from like a, say, evangelical Christian writer, because that's like a very specific sort of like Mormon thing in that regard. And I think it's a positive thing. It's a powerful thing. And I think it's one of those things that makes it easy for Sanderson to write sort of like found family sort of things and still put them into patriarchal structures after all, in a lot of ways. But it is still there, and I think that's a positive thing. Then there's other bits that are very Mormon inspired where I'm like, I don't know, man, that's maybe bad. So it is interesting, and I was kind of shocked that there doesn't seem to be a lot of like actual sort of like literature doing like looking at Sanderson in that regard yet, because maybe they don't think he's interesting enough.
I don't know. I've just never found Sanderson that interesting to me. I've never felt the draw to read any of his works. Maybe someday, but I'm just not really. I don't really feel the draw. It just sounds very like cookie cutter, type of epic fantasy, which I'm just offending everyone today, but
Yeah. Oh, hello, Mike. How are you doing? No, I don't think Sanderson's books are that interesting as such. Like, I think they are interesting as sort of like a cultural phenomenon more than like as like actual literary works, which still makes them interesting and worth discussing, because there's reasons why Sanderson is so fucking popular, and I think it might be worthwhile to examine, figure out why that is.
I don't know if Joe's still here, but if Joe's to be believed, he is actually very good at teaching writing, so I'll take Joe's word for it. He's generally very smart. It was funny. My friend
I didn't try to talk you out of reading Sanderson, Ida. I would never talk you out of reading any books. Except for maybe one or two where I think it's really important not to read them.
Don't read the Turner Diaries, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I would also go as far as to say don't read Camp of the Saints, no matter what like currently popular anti-woke booktubers claim. It's also like a fucking racist piece of trash, and you shouldn't read it. It's not worth it. But yeah, don't read those. Don't read Mein Kampf. It's not a good book.
Well, I agree, but also I think it's interesting to kind of get into the I don't know. it's a weird thing. I mean, don't read it because it's an awful book, and you're just gonna be absolutely mind boggled by just how bad it is. But also it's like it's kind of a historical document for better or for worse.
Yeah, but like the thing is like if you want to see how bad it is, you can read just a couple of paragraphs and realize how the entire
That's
fucking
true.
thing is.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
And that's the thing with historical documents. You don't need to read them unless you're actually doing something with that knowledge afterwards, right? It's like
I thought I thought Hyperion was just fine. I don't think it's like it's kind of I don't know if Raph like kind of just I don't know if Raph's like view I don't know if Raph's video on the subject of Hyperion kind of tainted my read of it, but I'm kind of with Raph where he on your video where you're like it's not the masterpiece people say it is. I'm like, yeah, I agree with that. I don't think it's a masterpiece by any stretch.
hello, the Gistal has arrived. How are you? I assume you are in France now. I hope that all worked out well. I guess welcome to Europe in that regard.
I've heard Paris stinks. I heard it smells awful over there. So I'm thinking that's a lot of cities. So
like it's a large city, and large cities in summer tend to not smell the best. That's just like how it is.
fair
I
point.
don't think it smells worse than any other large city that I've been in like summer. Let's put it that way. Athens in July is not exactly, smelling of roses either.
Yeah, the priest's tale and the scholar's tale were really good. It's just the other ones were just kind of so like hit and miss. I felt. I don't know. It felt like Simmons was kind of aiming for profundity, which I generally would hate, but he's actually pretty decent. He's actually a pretty good writer for the most part, like line by line, if that's what you want to call it. So, like, it didn't bother me so much as it would have in other books that do this.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Is like if you're in France, you'll end up in Paris sooner or later. That's just like how that works. It's sort of like a black hole in that regard. No, like that's the thing. Like as like when it just comes to like putting words on the page, Dan Simmons is or was a pretty good, a decent writer. I think his like prose style definitely deteriorated over the like time. Where like his later books are like something like Flashback isn't even well written anymore. But Hyperion definitely in that regard, it's solidly written. It's sort of in the things he puts in there, in the attitudes he puts in there, and the more he spends, time complaining about like students and kids these days, and all of that stuff, that he gets more and more obnoxious and just like annoying to listen to. But like I would never tell people not to read Hyperion. I would tell people not to worship Hyperion. That's sort of like the thing. Like read other books so you understand where Hyperion stands.
I think there's better science fiction books anyway. So there's my view. My point being, I don't know if Raph tainted my view, but I'm kind of I don't know if I'm quite as angry about Simmons's turn into right wing nuttery, but definitely am on the level of yeah, Hyperion's not a masterpiece. I really don't understand why people I mean, I don't want to yuck on people's yum, but I just don't see why people are like, "Oh my god, this is the greatest thing since childhood's end,"
I think it mostly is a lack of knowledge, which is usually the problem with people. Is like if you've only read like 10 science fiction books, Hyperion can stand out, because if what you've read outside of that is just, I don't know, two Asimov novels and one Arthur C. Clarke novel, chances are you'll find this impressive because it has such a broad scope and it does cite other literature and all of that kind of stuff. Like, I get where that comes from. I just think that being impressed or overawed by Hyperion is a sign of of very, very limited literary knowledge.
I personally love Childhood's End. I think it's a really great book. Definitely one of the best like classic sci-fi novels, in my opinion. Probably people are going like, man, this is bad, but I don't think so. Then again, I read it when I was like 15 and it blew my mind. So, you could feel free to take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But oh yeah, I do remember you didn't finish Hyperion, Liam. I think he didn't care for the what was it? The Canterbury Tales play on. I remember him saying.
But that's kind of the thing. Like, it's like, yeah. So, I'll pretend to be really smart because I'll name check a bunch of people, like, some Shakespeare here and there, and what's his face. See, I'm already blanking because I'm obviously tired and everything. But anyway, and obviously I'll pattern it after the Canterbury Tales, and then people will think I'm really, really smart and well educated. And obviously I was like a high school teacher in English, so clearly I know the classics, and everything we need to worship is the classics. And yeah, I was still planning to make a video on like this sort of like a return to sort of like classics and looking at older books that have won awards and stuff like that. And my working title was "Stop Jerking Off Harold Bloom." Stop jerking off Harold Bloom. That's necrophilia.
Well, speaking of classics, I am reading the Fagles edition of the Odyssey, and
I know.
It's really good. Still holds up. More rhythmic, I think, than the Emily Wilson version, which I'll admit I haven't read, but I read lines from it and I was thoroughly unimpressed. So, do that with that knowledge. Do what you will.
I haven't read the Wilson one either, so I can't fully comment on that. I think there is that weird thing that you struggle with when you do translations of poetry. It's like, do you try for like actual, like, word by word accuracy, which is really important if you're doing this in like an academic context, so you need to have all of those kind of things. And ideally you have like, like a version with like a glossary and stuff like that gives you like all the critical edition aspects. It's like, yeah, you could also translate this work in this way and so forth. Like, that's sort of like what you need to do if you do this like on an academic level. Or do you go for like something that really sounds cool? And if you go for sounds cool, then you're gonna lose some accuracy there, I think. And when you go to like older translations, I think Fagel definitely falls into that. A lot of people did lean more into sort of like the poetic aspect of it, which is, once again, which is fine. Like, you and me are not going to do this like word by word and trying to look at like different meanings for the same word and how they show up in other texts of the times and so forth. That's not what we're doing here, right? So it's totally fine to read Fagels in that regard, I think.
I was I considering Legends, I was considering reading Beowulf again because I'm hoping to read Grendel from John Gardner's at some point in the near future. So we'll see if that goes well, but we'll see how that goes. But I don't know.
The only thing I've read of John Gardner was his On Moral Fiction, because I read a review by Ursula Le Guin, and then I decided to also read the book that she was wrestling with. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, apparently he had some white opinions on why he thought postmodernism was bad. I think that was. I want to read On Moral Fiction as well at some point. So
it's good. It's interesting to read. I personally also have views on like why postmodernism might be bad. They are very different from John Gardner's, I suspect. But
what are you gonna do?
You can get at this from different sides. I would argue the main issue with postmodernism is that it foreclosed the option of an actual revolution or a revolutionary impulse, and goes like, no, it's whatever. It's sort of like that stage when you go to your capitalist realism, where suddenly everything is just there, and the loss of that revolutionary sort of like impulse is interesting. And when you look at like where a lot of these people, your quintessential postmodernists like Baudrillard and Foucault and so forth, how they sort of like came up in, say, the Situationist International, or sort of like one generation younger, and were part of that sort of like broader situationist 1968 thoughts sort of like area, and how the failure of that sort of like revolution sort of like brought them not to go like, well, I guess we need to find a different way to do a revolution, but brought them to sort of like to a certain form of fatalism in what they are doing when it comes to postmodernism. And that fatalism, I think, is dangerous, and has been, very, very dangerous for the last couple of, I guess like 30, 40 years at this point. I don't know when I will talk about the breezy stuff, Thornall.
I don't know what Tharnall's talking about, so I'm
he's talking about the newest books in the Drizzt Do'Urden series by
Wait, those are still coming out?
Yes, Salvatore is still publishing books every year.
Jesus.
And Breezy is the daughter of Drizzt Do'Urden and Katy.
That's her name? Good God.
Yeah, Breezy is the daughter of Drizzt Do'Urden.
That sounds really stupid, honestly.
I am not going to argue with you on that one.
It better fantasy name than that. Come on now, get a grip.
I think he's somewhere in the mid 40s now, with his Drizzt books. There's like all kinds of other stuff that he's written around that. Like,
yeah, that's why I don't want to read like Dresden and stuff. They're so freaking long, man. Like, I only have so much time, Ref.
I mean, the first couple of Dresden books are relatively short. That's easy, and they're really fast reads. Same goes for those Dark Elf books by Salvatore. They are short, like they're like 500 book, 400 page maximum. You can just like knock them out one per day because there's nothing happening there, and it's very simple language.
I thought about reading To Like the Lightning this year, but I don't know. I don't know if I have enough brain power considering all the other books I'm going to be reading this year. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's bad. Like leaving that stuff behind. I totally get that. Like, and also like, transporting guitars from the US to Europe is a massive pain in the ass. Like, even if you take them like one by one on a plane when traveling back and forth, it's a pain.
Yeah, I was all I don't know what I was gonna say. I'm kind of lost now.
I don't know.
Oh, good luck with the guitars. I don't know if Trump put a ban on guitars. I wouldn't be shocked. He's making less and less sense as the days are going on.
I mean, there's like if you already own your guitar, you can bring your guitar with you to Europe. That's not a big deal. It's just a massive hassle to take them on the airplane, and because obviously you want your guitar to arrive ideally in one piece, right? And that makes it kind of difficult. It's like depending on the airline, you need to book like an extra seat for your guitar, or have like a massive flight case, and then there's still like a chance that your airline was gonna lose your guitar and stuff. It's fucked up. And I'm saying this as
one of those idiots throwing the baggage is gonna break it. Fun stuff like that, I imagine. Also, fuck the TSA. I don't like TSA. Yeah. Anyway,
like I've booked flights for a lot of bands from the US and from other countries. So it really depends on the airline, and it's like depending on the airline, you just need to book an extra seat, and you can take it with you on board of on the plane and put it next to you in a seat, and thus never leave it out of your sight. So that's the safest way, but obviously also like really expensive, and so for then if you put it into like one of those massive hard shell flight cases, then they're checked luggage, and then it kind of can be the usual, like they're gonna lose it or something. But yeah, it's always a pain and it's very expensive.
Then again, I don't really like a lot of government organizations, so I mean, take that with what you will.
Thornell, it's a shit city.
I think he meant the Dresden Files.
I was just going to make a Bomber Harris joke here, man. No, I just really don't like some of the creepiness in it. I just don't find it interesting. I feel Jim Butcher is constantly making really unnecessary mistakes, and yeah, the whole like every new woman that Dresden encounters, he first has to tell us how many nipple piercings she has. I'm like, I don't know if that is necessary. There's a bunch of these like really unnecessary stuff in the Dresden books. It's kind of frustrating because it could be really cool, and then it usually ends up being, I don't know, frustratingly boring. Like,
I don't know. It just seemed to me kind of like that guy. It seems like one of those books that like followed up that Joss Whedon thing, but like doesn't really do it as well as Joss Whedon did.
I mean, it's definitely. I think there's like two things happening there. One is that yes, it does have sort of like certainly has like an inspiration from that, and I feel like unlike so many other audiobooks, like the Dresden Files is so tied to the audiobooks narrated by James Masters that has sort of like tied it even closer to the whole like Whedon, Buffy, whatever universe, right? So I think that's part of, and you can't blame Jim Butcher for that one. That's very much just like by virtue of James Masters being so well known for his role in Buffy and stuff like that.
Yeah, my friend Jay was talking about some of the like more cringier parts of the Dresden Files, and I was just like, oh well, okay, that's weird.
Yeah, the Queen of Fae doesn't have nipples and no nipple piercings, but several other characters when they meet them, it's like some of the really unnecessary cringe stuff. But it's not the worst thing I've ever read, but
never really felt the itch to, and it's weird because I like noir books a lot, but I don't know, the noir elements seem a bit superficial to me from the sounds of it.
They also get like that's like the other part, right? Like the first 2 or 3, I would argue, are still fairly sort of like hard-boiled-ish, slightly noir-ish detective tales, and at that point sort of like the larger sort of like meta plot kind of thing takes over, and the whole like, oh, he's a wizard detective, and people come to him with like specific problems that he has to solve. That stuff is kind of thrown out of the window because he has to do like world shaping adventures and shit, and he's no longer just the guy hired to figure out what happened with this one weird thing where someone left, where someone is missing or whatever, right? Like the private detective / wizard thing gets that premise gets thrown out very quickly, and that is part of like what makes the rest of it just like not that interesting to me.
You know what series I do want to read though?
Yeah.
The Witchy War books from DJ Butler. I don't know if Liam's still here, but he'll know what those are. But yeah, those actually seem really interesting though. Yeah, despite the silliness of the title, like Witchy War, like what the hell is that? But anyway, interesting concept though. I would like to read it. Another Mormon writer. There's a lot of Mormon fantasy writers, believe it or not, right?
Yeah, I know. I think like, and that's like the other part for me, Thorne. I was like, I did play some World of Darkness, and at some point, like a lot of the stuff he's doing feels like World of Darkness fan fiction, with like the serial numbers filed off, and I'm like, okay, but we got the vampires, we got the werewolves, we got the fae, like changeling fae, and I'm like, okay, we got the demons. I don't know if you ever went to like the Wraith part, but it is also, it feels very 90s nostalgia in a lot of ways to me.
Oh yes, one of my goals this year was to read some Adrian Tchaikovsky because a lot of my friends, a lot of people on YouTube are like, "Oh my god, Adrian Tchaikovsky!" And I'm like, "All right, yeah, it sounds interesting." I didn't know which book I would start with first. I was leaning on Service Model since it deals with the topic I'm rather fascinated in, which is AI and sentience and can AI gain sentience. But
No, it
um,
can't. Not at the moment.
the I did by happen chance at a local bookstore I go to from time to time. I did pick up his book Guns of the Dawn, which um,
It is a cool title.
that is a cool title, yes. And it also deals with like flintlock stuff, which I'm really fascinated with. So yeah, I definitely would like to read this. I don't know now which one I want to read first, either this
I
one or
was
Service Model.
I was thinking about, yeah, Elder Race is definitely one I've heard good things about.
Yeah, or he really
I,
likes Elder Race. Oh, see, now we're at 15 because people are Adrian Tchaikovsky.
I am still not very interested in Tchaikovsky. I might just pick up his new one that comes out in June,
Oh,
the Green City Wars, because it says Redwall means hard boiled on the back, and I'm like, well, you got me at like Cyber Raccoon, I guess. It's very
God,
simple things that make me read a book.
I hate those fucking I hate those fucking Hollywood pitches. I'm so annoyed with them. I get that's like a marketing stuff, but like, I fucking hate that. Stop it. But no, yeah, so it's either that or Service Model. We'll see where I land.
Now, for me, it's like right now the We Dance Upon Demons. There's a new and lucky Radiant Star that's also out, and I haven't gotten to that one yet. But I think I'm missing some in her sort of like Imperial Raj series after the ancillary trilogy already. So I might have to go back and do more of that stuff. And there was something else that comes out this month. Oh yeah, right. How could I forget the next Long London Quartet one?
Yes, that is coming out. I wasn't that impressed with the Great Win. I thought it was fun, but it didn't really grab me in the way many Moore's best work has. But not against picking up I Hear a New World. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
trying to
no,
kind of avoid series at the moment. So
yeah. No, I know they're supposed to be standalones, but I still would like to just sort of like have the larger context of it, I guess. That makes sense. But we'll see. I'm certainly not running out of books. I have like some nonfiction stuff that I want to read. Carbon Democracy is one that I suppose will make me very angry. And I did just back the Kickstarter for the audiobook for Cory Doctorow's new book coming out in June, which is, of course, the Reverse Centaur's Guide to Survivors of the AI, to AI Survivors, something like that, or Survivors of the AI Bubble. One of those. It's a new Cory Doctorow. He's going to be angry, and you kind of know what it's built of because, all of the blog posts have been free on his blog for a while. But, I like supporting Cory Doctorow.
but yeah, so again, not really sure if I want to read Guns of the Dawn first or Service Model. We'll see where it goes. But another new book that just came out. There's one called Yesteryear, and it sounds really dumb from the sounds of it. It seems like one of those books where the author just has contempt for the certain audience. I don't know. Maybe it's just me projecting. But yeah, I don't know. It's yeah, it sounds kind of dumb. I don't know. Then again, I think a lot of popular things are dumb. So it's.
I mean, I've heard about Yesteryear. I don't think I'm interested in it. I've seen some people who really love it. I've seen some people who think it's really bad from all sides of the spectrum, which makes me suspect that it's just like not that interesting.
I mean, Willow Heath liked it, but then again, I don't know. I kind of have the same kind of push pull with her that I do with Reads with Rachel, though I don't think she's quite as obnoxious as Reads with Rachel.
I don't necessarily like. I think there are differences between the two in approach and so forth. Also, genuinely,
Yes, Willow's definitely less condescending, and that's one thing.
well, it's also broadly speaking way more educated.
That as well.
That is also true, Joe. I still have like 3 of them that I still need to go through. No, I need to get like through the first one and then the ones that you sent me the codes for, and yeah, you know. I've like as I said, like carbon democracy, which sounds like the kind of thing that will make me really angry, and well, Omar Bartov's Israel, What Went Wrong, which I could, get interested in. I still want to read Molly Krabappel's really, really interesting history of the Jewish Bund, which has an amazing title I always forget. Here Where We Live Is Our Land, or something like that. It's a massive book, and I want to read it because it sounds really fascinating and cool. So lots of interesting stuff that isn't even fiction.
Yeah, I've been trying to dip more into nonfiction. I've just been kind of carried away with other fiction.
Yeah. Yeah, Here Where We Live Is Our Country by Molly Crabapple. A really interesting thing. Much of like a big history of the Jewish Bund and all of those Jewish communists in in Eastern and Central Europe fighting against anti-Semitism in the 19th and 20th century. Really cool shit.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of.
Yeah, the very big difference between the German Bund and the Jewish Bund. Let's just be very clear about that one, Thornall. One of them got silver shirts, the other ones didn't. Although, technically, there's a difference between the silver shirts and the German Bund.
Oh, Mac's still here. He says he has a video on recent research on the Picts. I can send it to you. I feel like I bombarded you lately, so yeah, you can send it later. That's fine. I don't mind. I'm just kind of. I am relaxing, honestly. But going back to my original point, yeah. Don't know where I'll be starting there with Adrian Tchaikovsky anyway. Seems like an interesting guy. I mean, he seems like he's doing like interesting things with like science fiction, fantasy, and not just like doing the Sanderson thing again, which that's always appreciated.
I will read him at some point, and probably I'll like some of his stuff, and we'll see what happens.
I mean, since Jeff Vandermeer's kind of off doing his thing about the environment, and China Mieville's been in hiding for the past 10 years. It's nice to see Tchaikovsky's kind of, putting out he's kind of adding on to the market, if you will.
Yeah, Primi Mohammed has a new novel coming out later this year, which I'm really excited for because her stuff is also always has the things I've read of her so far have been really interesting and unique and weird and fascinating. Very, very sort of like uncompromising.
Well, I do like uncompromising. So
yeah, like like The Siege of Burning Grass is an amazing book about radical pacifism and nonviolent resistance and stuff like that in a weird fantasy sci-fi world, and just like dealing with that. It's like having fantasy and sci-fi that so often are sort of like, yeah, well, obviously there's the good guys and there's the bad guys, and we solve all our problems with violence, and going at that with like radical nonviolent resistance is like really interesting hard read, like, because it's not easy to make that work, and she does make that work, but it's just like fascinating for that or on its own, I think. And her Butcher of the Forest, really cool sort of like fairy tale not really retelling, but like a fairy tale short novella, really cool. And what can we offer you tonight? A very angry book about sex work and stuff in, once again, a far future sci-fi world.
Well, speaking of grass, I did also get in the same haul. I got Guns of the Dawn. I also got William Volman's book Argyll, which is like his take on the Pocahontas John Smith story.
Okay,
And given my fascination with
Bowman.
Puritans and all that fun stuff, I definitely would like to read it. Though I do want to read one of his more accessible ones first, because it's kind of like Mason and Dixon. It's not just about the time period, but it is told in the lingo and idiom of said time period. So
Okay.
that's always fun. So I'd like to get one of his more accessible. Do you allow children in the stream? I don't know, but if you I mean, it's not an anti-kid show, but we talk about a lot of like intense stuff. So maybe not. Though if you're gonna be weird, you will get blocked. So don't start spamming a bunch of weird shit.
Yeah, I have not read any Volman yet. I'm aware of him, but I haven't gotten to that kind of stuff yet.
Yeah, I want to read one of his more like accessible books, whatever that means, because I know he's very like stylistically demanding. But I'd like to read like The Dying Grass first before I really jump into something like Argyll, kind of get a gist of his style.
Yeah. He also has something new, like right now, right? He had like a
Yeah, he
new
wrote like a
release.
1,000,000-word novel about the CIA or something like that. It's crazy.
Wasn't he supposedly a CIA asset for a while? Wasn't there something about that?
Yeah, they actually thought he was the Unabomber for a while until they figured out Ted Kaczynski was the real one. So I'm like, that's fucking crazy, dude. That's a flex, No, it's funny. My friend Carol, he runs a channel called Carol Wainwright. He used to be called The Falcon Reads. He actually reviewed Ted Kaczynski's like deranged manifesto, and I'm just like, damn, dude, you're gonna be on a list for that probably. Oh man.
I mean, it's available, I think. I don't know if this.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to read it though. Like,
you were talking about reading Mein Kampf earlier for like
that's
historical
true.
context.
Yeah, that's true.
So I mean, at that point,
I mean,
right?
I'm not saying nobody should read it. I'm just saying, you probably should read it, but I don't know if I want to read it though.
Oh my!
I have my limits, people. It's like radical anarcho primitivism's where I draw the line, I guess.
Well, it's not my preferred sort of like ideology, but it might still be worth reading.
Possibly, yeah. Yeah, he just recently did a video on the closing of the American mind, which is which is a very fascinating book in a lot of ways. I actually read that in high school. Has a lot to say about our modern education system. So, all that fun stuff. But yeah, I got that. I got Telegraph Avenue from Michael Chabon, which was
nice. I haven't read that one yet.
And Live by Night from Dennis Lehane. That was another one I just kind of happened to find. I'm like, oh, this is a godsend. I'll have to pick this up. I have seen the first Ghost in the Shell movie. I love it. I think it's great. Haven't read the manga or any of the other anime. But again, I do really like the original Ghost in the Shell film. I think it's really well done.
Yeah.
Really great. Speaking of AI and sentience and all that, that's a really great film about that very subject. So yeah, I'm kind of a sucker for that stuff. But I didn't know there was a new adaptation. I don't know really what they'll. I forgot that Ghost in the Shell was an adaptation, to be honest with you. So there you go.
Oh yeah, right. Like we're getting close to the next Marlon James novel coming out as well, like in September, I think.
Yep, which is just straight up agony for me as someone who's been reading the Dark Star trilogy and waiting for the third book to come out. I'm like, damn it, Marlon, why?
I mean, he might, just be interested in something different right now.
That's true. I'm kind of afraid he'll go into that like Scott Lynch, Patrick Rothfuss, George R. R. Martin, where he's like, I can't finish the damn book. I don't see why, because again, the Dark Star trilogy isn't a series that has like a one overarching story, or well, I guess it does, but it's being told by three different people. So the whole fragility of truth thing.
I mean, that's the thing. Is like, unlike say Patrick Rothfuss in particular, he is still publishing and writing books. So and I don't know. I don't worry about any of those. I feel like Rothfuss is going to finish his books at some point when nobody cares and nobody looks at him, and then he maybe just have I think being unobserved is something that would help someone like Patrick Rothfuss. Same for Scott Lynch, I think. Although hasn't Lynch delivered like the next one? I think there was something that he has something coming out. Or
he did write some short stories in the Locke Lamora world, but I haven't heard anything about the novel yet. So I have heard that he will be announcing something when he talks with Joe Abercrombie soon, but I don't know what that is.
Well, I was kind of I was kind of snide there with like the punk getting lost, but I think like with like a lot of cyberpunk for me in particular is sort of like that usually the people that you are looking at are outsiders. They're not necessarily part of the corporate structure or anything of the sorts. And usually a lot of these stories end with some kind of paradigm shift, some kind of rapture, some kind of world-shattering event where the status quo is taken apart, taken down. That sort of like rebellion element, whether that is the Neuromancer trilogy, like the Sprawl trilogy, where you have sort of like the freeing of the AIs and sort of like figuring out how to maybe have a future with conscious artificial intelligences and humans exploring stuff together, whether it is sort of like the taking down of that structure during Snow Crash, whether it is at the end of the Takashi Kovacs trilogy by Richard K. Morgan, which ends with Kovacs and the others joining the whatever her name was, rebellion, and so forth. Like, there is that element to it, and Last Contract of Isako doesn't have any of that because, well, she's a corporate samurai working for the corporation until the end, and though she finds out the terrible secret the corporation is holding, she then just like stays away and doesn't do anything with it. And then the whole like, well, there is this world-shattering truth that everyone, that the higher ups in the corporation already know, but we'll not do anything with that. We'll just like leave it there. And that's why I compared it to the things that Alistair Reynolds is doing in Halcyon Years, which has a very similar structure of like you have this in this case, generation ship. In Isako, Last Contract of Isako, it's a colony planet that has lost contact with Earth, and there is something going on, some dark secret that the sort of like leaders of the corporation, or in this case, like the two ruling families of the generation ship in Halcyon Years, are keeping from everyone else because they assume that it's better for society if that sort of like news doesn't get out and so forth. And then our heroes find out that terrible truth, and well, in Halcyon Years, Yuri Gagarin, first cosmonaut in space and now private detective on a generation ship, decides to, well, bring the news to everyone and start a fucking revolution and do the proper thing. And in Last Contract of Isako, nothing happens. They just like sit there and wait to either die or get killed by like a corporate assassin, and that's that. They don't even hand out the truth to anyone. It's like, well, come on. And that's what I mean when the punk aspect kind of gets lost. and it mostly gets lost because she's trying to sort of like combine it with the traditional sort of like samurai story, which usually is, you know, about that conflict of loyalty versus morality in a lot of ways. And either you have your Ronin that are obviously doomed to die, or you find some other ways. And that doesn't really work well with the cyberpunk version, where you sort of like the rebels kind of, at least, you know, at least manage to change the world in some way. It will usually be very open what happens next, but there is some fundamental sort of like paradigm shift. It's like Islands in the Net by Bruce Sterling also has that sort of like paradigm shift somewhere going on there. And there's no paradigm shift. There's nothing happening in Last Contract of Isako.
Yeah, no, I in other news, Joe Abercrombie announced the second book of the Devils. It's called The Heretics, which cool. I'm probably not going to read it because I didn't really like the Devils all that much.
Well, she has said in interviews that it is a standalone and will remain a standalone. So I guess it's not preparing for a sequel.
I am thinking about reading like the Heroes or one of the other standalones sometime during the year, because well, there's one other standalone's called Red Country, but anyway.
Red Country is pretty fun. It's like a Western.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, I've heard. Yes, I've been told.
Have you read the other two, Best Served Cold and The Heroes?
I haven't read The Heroes, but I did read Best Served Cold, which Best Served Cold was fun, but I again just kind of felt like he was treading water a bit on stuff he already did really well in the original trilogy. So I was kind of like, do you have much more to say, Joe? Like, you know, what you're doing well, but you know, I kind of want to see you challenge yourself a little.
It doesn't do much challenging in the other standalones either. That's part of the things he does have like a very distinct style, and he's kind of stuck in that. What I appreciated about the Heroes is sort of like the framing is really interesting, because he's basically telling a like a World War I story, but as a fantasy story. So it's like this one massive battle, and it's just like 3 days of this battle basically, and nothing else around that. So it's interesting in that regard.
Yeah, I've heard The Heroes be called like his best single book, which I'm curious to see, you know, what that's about. But yeah, I really was quite fond of Last Argument of Kings. I just think the latter half of that book is just really great.
Yeah.
A lot of people love book 2. I like book 2. But yeah, no, I think Last Argument of Kings, like the horror element really comes into play in that book.
Yeah. I think. Yeah, I mean, like as like the Heroes is more like him trying to write All Quiet and on the Western Front, but in like the First Law universe, kinda, which is just interesting because it is sort of like a challenge. Like how can I take my very distinct style and put it into like a very specific sort of like sub genre sort of like formula.
Yeah, you know what's funny? I'm reading the Odyssey at the moment, and you know, the Blade itself is ostensibly a play from the Odyssey. And you know, reading the Odyssey, there is a lot of violence and bloodshed, and like Odysseus kind of acting like a massive jerk. So I'm like, if people don't like, you know, grim, dark, you know, morally gray protagonists, I mean, don't read the fucking Odyssey. 'Cause let me tell you, Odysseus can act like a real bastard at times. You know.
Oh, yeah.
Fun times.
No, obviously.
I was a little shocked when I saw Willow really liked, going back to Willow Heath. I was a bit shocked that she really liked the Devils so much. She was like comparing it to like Dickens, and I'm like, I again, I don't want to yuck on anyone's yum here. If you love the Devils, that's awesome. I'm really happy for you. But I felt it was a step down from his other work. I don't know. It didn't really feel like he had as much to say as he did in the First Law trilogy.
I do agree. I I think it's more that he pushes more on sort of like the dark and gross humor, and I think that's something that someone like Willow generally likes a lot of like horror and darker stuff in that regard. And don't forget, they're both British. That makes a big difference when it
This is
comes to
true.
specifics of like
This is true. This is true. Yeah, it's because Greeks consider cunning to be the ultimate form of intelligence. Yeah, I mean it's kind of interesting reading the Odyssey because again, their morality is very different from ours, what we have now. So Odysseus's kind of uglier traits is kind of considered to be like, I don't want to say it's virtue, but it is considered like admirable. And again, if you think like gritty fantasy is like super dark and depraved, and what happened to these old fantasy, I like, again, just pick up the Odyssey. It is about as violent as the most like grim dark novel you can imagine. So there you go. I was about to say it is about as violent and morally complex as any of the gritty fantasy novels of like an Abercrombie or Martin, for that matter.
Yeah.
That said, I am actually considering making a video about why I think a lot of the criticism about modern grimdark, or the books that are like super popular in grimdark, is kind of missing the point. So well, yeah, hopefully that video will get made at some point in the near future.
Oh, you can always do that.
Also, Raph, I got to thank you because you kind of gave me the idea for that video because of The Value of Grit, which is a great essay, by the way, from Joe Abercrombie. I think it's very interesting.
And I think The Value of Grit is a really good one because it does explain sort of like what he wants to do and what his goals sort of like are.
Mm-hmm.
And you can disagree with that, but at least he sets out his points, right?
Yeah, I guess the video I'm thinking about doing is more just going to be me ranting about why I think people who go like, "Oh, it's just saying everything's pointless and yada yada." I think they're just wrong, because I think that I think Martin and Abercrombie especially are talking about how systems of power wear down and hollow out people. And that's an awful thing, and you probably shouldn't do that. And yeah,
Well, but I mean, but that's the point. It's like going like, well, look at like how systems of power suck. The question is, do you then actually pose the question, so what should we do instead? Or do you go, well, I guess that's just like what we have to live with?
Well, that's the thing. I think what they're saying is a bit deeper than that. I think it's just, I think there's an art to what they're doing. I hope to explain it while also kind of getting pissed off about it as well. And I think reading the Odyssey is kind of giving me some more ammo on this, because it's also kind of going into this process about how not necessarily systems of power, but how like violence wears people down and kind of hollows them out on the inside, to where they become, there's literally an episode where they go into the underworld and are confronted by the ghosts of the past. So I mean,
yeah, I know. I know
there.
the whole conversation with Achilles, who is not exactly fucking happy.
Yeah, I just read that part last night, so it's on my mind. So I'm just kind of like, it's always been there, people, is what I'm trying to get at. So it's not new.
No, I agree. I think like there is a level of sort of like fatalism or cynicism in Abercrombie and partly in Martin. I think they're different in what they're doing. And it then gets obviously turned to 11 in something like the Broken Empire trilogy by Mark Lawrence, which is, just dumb.
Yeah, I just, after someone told me about what like the big twist was of that trilogy, I'm not really interested in reading them.
I think he has a good idea, but he's not good enough a writer to actually pull it off. And that may have changed by now, but the thing
That
is,
said, you did get me really interested to read The Steel Remains, Raph, because that book actually sounds really interesting from the sound of it.
That one definitely has some interesting points to make. It also gets incredibly violent and dark in the opening of the second volume.
I don't mind that.
It poses the very important question. So, if you free slaves, should you then let those free slaves sexually assault their slaver?
That's a good point. That's a good question to ask. You know?
Yeah, that's the level of dark we're getting to.
Jesus. No, but yeah, going back to my, I don't want to spoil what that whole video is going to be about, but it is basically just going to be me ranting about why I think people kind of miss the point when it comes to Abercrombie and Martin, what they're going on about. At least in their best work. I don't think the Devils is really saying anything substantial, which is really frustrating because I know
saying a lot of it's not saying a lot of new things. I feel
because I know Abercrombie can do better than this, and I think he's a far more thoughtful author than people and even himself give more, credit to. So there's that.
I'm just pissed off that he has this whole church thing, and they have like the wheel or the circle, and then he still calls it a fucking crusade when he could call it a circus. I mean, come on, missed chance right there. You want to do comedy, do fucking comedy.
But yeah, no. Anyway, yeah, I have a lot to say on that subject of gritty fantasy and people misunderstanding things. Yeah, I mean, the werewolf part is cool. It's just kind of like what he's saying about religion isn't that interesting. It's just like, oh, I could literally read Philip Pullman and get that. And even then, I don't think Philip Pullman's any good either. Sophie, come on. Well, I did really like the good man Jesus and Scoundrel Christ. So he can do good work. It's just kind of
yeah, if you get bitten by a monk, you turn into a monk. That is unfortunately true.
You know what was funny? I did read Joe Abercrombie's review of The Steel Remains, and his complaint was just like, yeah, it feels a little modern in places. And I'm like, and he even acknowledges, he's like, look, I know that kind of sounds silly coming from me, but we all have our limits, people. And that's so funny. I'm just like, that's great.
No, that review is really funny though. It's like, well, he takes the cliches of fantasy, sets them on fire, and then pisses on him. And we're like, yeah, that's kind of true. I have to say, The Steel Remains does have like one of the best opening paragraphs in your grim, darker fantasy, though.
Yeah, no, I saw I saw his epigraph is from The Broken Sword, so I was like, oh, this could be interesting, actually.
It's also dedicated to Black Company. Like,
so I guess Richard Morgan knows his stuff about fantasy.
He knows his stuff when it comes to fantasy and science fiction literature. I think he should probably read up on gender theory at some point, but that's a different thing.
But yeah, no, but yeah, I have a lot to say on the subject of gritty fantasy / grim dark, which I've never really been fond of that phrase, but who is at this point? Joe Abercrombie didn't really like it at first either, but we know how that went.
It's not wrong to like anything. That's kind of the point, right? Like your tastes are your own, and I certainly will not send you to the re-education camp for it. I don't have the power. That's like the only reason, obviously, But Britton, are you planning to keep going for a while, or are you slowly ending this?
I'm probably gonna keep going for a little while longer. I don't know how much longer, but we'll see.
It's the should I get myself another beer question that I was asking.
I mean, you definitely can if you want to. Yeah.
In that case, I'll do just that, and I'll be back in a minute with a beer.
Max sent me some goodies on I don't know if he wants me to say this, but Max sent me some goodies on the on Discord, so I'm gonna have to look at them later on. So he was sending me a bunch of stuff last night because I was asking about the Odyssey and if the movie's going to be any good. Because, oh wow, interesting. Vile put out a video about Rorschach, so I'll have to watch that. I think you did on the last one. I remember you thanking me for Hillbilly, but I'm glad to oblige. Hillbilly's a lot of fun. It's a good one. The Goon from Eric Powell is also really great. It's one of the funniest comics I've ever read. So there you go. I mean, it's up there with like Preacher. Preacher at its best. There's some Preacher gags that aren't that great, but oh man. Oh boy, how'd that go? You know, I've been kind of ranting about this on Twitter, but yeah, I'm kind of tired of The Boys, honestly. It's not my favorite Garth Ennis work, but I don't think it's just the edgy nonsense that other people say that it is. I mean, I could make a whole I've thought about making a whole video like just kind of going over my thoughts on The Boys, but yes, it is a bit different from the show. I think the show is a bit better handled in some places, but I think there's some directions the show has gone in that I think the comic did better. So it's kind of it's that work by an author where I think it kind of encapsulates everything good and bad about their style. So take that with what you will. Also, it does get a bit grating after a while with the superhero, the whole Garth Ennis just going like, "This is fucking stupid, and you're fucking stupid for liking it," you know. Which I don't really like reading that after a while when you make that point like 4 times. I it gets a bit annoying. TV show does not have that as much. Yeah, I'm kind of just I'm more tired of the discourse around The Boys than like The Boys in general. Though I am kind of sick of The Boys in general because I don't know. I'm just kind of tired of it. Like, can we just move on, do something else? But unfortunately, the Hollywood machine is not done. No. Which is ironically kind of feeding into Garth Ennis's point, because I think the thing about The Boys is it's not a superhero comic. It's not about superheroes. It's about corporate America and like celebrity culture. That's what a lot of people kind of miss because they see all like the weird, violent, and sexual stuff and they get turned off, which understandable. But it's more of just Garth Ennis ranting about corporate America and like celebrity culture than anything else. So, there you go.
Well, I mean, America is getting more and more corporate, so
look, I'm just saying, if you've ever been annoyed at like how long the MCU has been dragged out, or if like when DC tries to milk Watchmen for all it's worth, I can't really say with a straight face that Garth Ennis doesn't have a point, No,
of course.
So, there you go. Talk about superheroes particularly, but you can say that about anything with corporate culture. I just don't, in terms of like superhero deconstruction, I don't think The Boys is quite as refined as something like a Watchmen, for instance. But then again, I think Watchmen's like on the like peak, so I don't know if anything can really reach it. But nonetheless, I think The Boys is an interesting series. I think it's better than some people give it credit for, but I can definitely understand why people are turned off by it. It is a very unpleasant read a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And again, it kind of goes into, how power corrupts and kind of hollows people out on the inside, and, how rage and violence also hollow you out on the inside, which is something Garth Ennis does very well. So, there you go.
Yeah. Turns out violence, not exactly good for us.
No. Again, kind of going back to the Odyssey, it's interesting reading it. And, yeah, again, it feels very contemporary at times with like its discussion of like disillusionment and like we fought this war and all these people died and like what was it for? It just kind of feel like we just kind of feel like we just threw away all these lives for nothing. And I'm like, damn, like that's really good. You know? I could see like Abercrombie pulling from this. Because that's another thing Abercrombie really likes to talk about is like, oh yeah, violence and throwing lives away for no reason. Like, that's really bad, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think, Raph. I'm sure you have opinions on this.
On which part in particular? I mean, obviously, I haven't read The Boys or anything of the sort, right?
Well, no, I mean just that kind of idea that like violence and like throwing lives away just kind of don't really solve anything at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, that is kind of the point, right? Like, I mean, violence can solve some problems. The thing is, that violence is a solution that people tend towards if they assume that that's the only thing that works, right? Like that's the problem. It's like it's your Franz Fanon wretched of the earth kind of things. Like if all you see as is violence, and all you ever get taught is violence, and all your everything that ever changes something is people being violent towards you, then you'll assume that violence is the only thing that works. The problem is, of course, that that is not how societies should work, and that's not how most societies have ever worked. But we've built up a media, especially in the last, I don't know, 50, 60 years, I think, that is sort of like heavily focusing on violence as the only sort of like solution for any problem. Ideally, about bending the rules and going and being violent to solve problems. Like that's like all your like 80s action movies that are admittedly really cool, but like what is the Lethal Weapon franchise if not someone ignoring the rules and going to just murder people because that's the only solution? That's the same thing you get with like the Die Hards franchise. That's like all of those sort of like stories. It's Dirty Harry, it's all of those things, and it has sort of like become a foundational narrative in the West that sometimes you need to just use violence instead of like actual rules that we have set up to sort of like avoid all of that.
Yeah, I mean,
And that
I guess I kind of like those like unapologetically ugly and like this is bad. Maybe not this is bad, but like look how bad this can get.
yeah.
Because again, it's I was talking the other day on my video about my modern issues with like criticism on the internet and like which I guess isn't really criticism, but I digress. But there's people who go like, oh, well, the violence is too much, or there's also that kind of weird double standard with like sexual violence and just violence in general, and which is kind of a saucy subject. I'll admit. I'm not gonna say that like you're wrong for being offended by sexual violence, but I'm kind of the opinion that if you're going to depict something like that, then you should depict it as ugly as possible. Which that might make me an edgelord, but it is what it is.
I think it's that's a fair point to make. I feel like with violence and with any of these themes, I mean that's why you have content warnings, so people can make an informed decision whether they want to actually engage with that shit or not. It's like, well, if something specific, whether it's violence or sexual violence or cruel animal cruelties, big ones, like if any of these things you don't want to deal with, and there are valid reasons for not wanting to deal with any of that kind of stuff, right? Like it could re-traumatize you, whatever, right? Like then you should be aware of the fact that something is coming, so you can avoid that and go like, well, then I'll just not take Discord. Like there is no right to there's no like fundamental right to actually be able to enjoy every single piece of media. That's not how that works, right? But you should be able to make that specific decision in advance. Go like, well, I guess then that's not for me. And after that, if you go like, well, if it says graphic violence on the cover and I still read it, then I don't get to complain afterwards that it is ugly because it said that on the tin. That's what that's what informed decisions mean.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't mind content warnings. Like, content warnings, fine. Like, there's some people who think that's like censorship or whatnot. Or there was that one company that went under because the one guy was like, "Man, those fucking content warnings, they're just stupid." That whole thing. I'm not like that. Like, if you want to put a content warning in a book, like that's fine. I personally don't want to do it because, I mean, I don't want to get into that, but it again, I feel like if you're going to depict violence or even sexual violence for that matter, like you kind of have to make it ugly and unpleasant. I mean,
Yeah.
if you really want it to have effect. And not that I don't mind like stylized violence. It's just kind of like, yeah, like what do you expect? Like, you punch a guy and it's going to be like hunky dory. I don't know.
No, but I think, yeah, like obviously, if the goal is to show that violence is a bad thing, then you might want to, make that point actually clear, because you can't actually trust your audience otherwise.
Yeah, I mean,
And even then, you'll find someone who goes like, "Wow, this is cool."
But there's also the fact when it comes to like sexual violence, a lot of it is written really badly. So, there's that too, especially in fantasy novels. My God, not even get into that. I mean, gore, the John Norman Gore books exist. So I don't really need to say much more aside from that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a whole other thing. I do find like I think the problem is like if you tackle topics like that comes with a responsibility to you as the artist, right? To actually do it right. And I think that's like the other part of this. Like,
what does that mean though? Like I was watching a video the other day from actually I won't say her name, but she was making a video about sexual violence in fantasy, which is nice because I think that's a subject that needs to be discussed. Because again, I think it's often done badly. But again, I kind of have issue with. I take umbrage with the idea that you could depict something like that tastefully, because it's not inherently.
no. Oh, if you, I don't think if we're talking about sexual assault or anything of that sort, then that is definitely not something you should depict tastefully. There is a difference between doing doing it in like a gratuitous way, right?
Well, sure, yeah.
And George R. Martin certainly does verge on that a lot from time to time.
Oh, for sure. There's especially in the later books. I'm not saying
Where
it does.
where I'm like,
I haven't read too far into Malazan yet, but there wasn't very much rape in the Gardens of the Moon. So I do hear it happens a little later on, though.
There is like one very, very specific scene in book 9 that's usually the one that people bring up, and I understand why people are sort of like triggered by that. I totally get it. I don't think it's gratuitous, but then again,
Yeah, but again, what does gratuitous mean? Again, to paraphrase something Marlon James said, it's like, well, violence by its nature is too much. So I mean,
yeah,
I guess it's up to the person. I mean, there's parts of like Garth Ennis's stuff where I'm like, okay, I think you're going a little too far there. But again, like, what's the line? Like, is there a line? Like, should there be a line? I don't know.
I mean, I think yes and no. Like in a well-regulated society and so forth, there will always be such lines, just because of like how we do, how we work as a society, right? Like there will be a line, and if that line is your editor going like, we're not going to print this thing, right? So there will be lines factually, whether you want to or not.
Well, yeah, I get that. I don't know. But nonetheless, I think that's a conversation worth having because again, I think sexual assault in fantasy is done badly a lot of the time. either it's used to show how evil and bad the bad guys are, or it's like some weird like they kind of get off on it in a sense. We're like, yeah.
Well,
It's
I
like this
mean,
it's like the one way to give like female characters depth. With that, I'm like, yeah, that's bad. Don't do that. Yeah.
I've read the first Thomas Covenant novel, so
Yeah, wasn't he like high off his ass or something, or thought it wasn't real or something like that?
it is complicated, and yes, he does think that it is a dream. Which still asks the questions like, so if you are lucid dreaming, you start raping women, okay? That still doesn't make you a good person. If you think that you're dreaming and you have control of your dream, the first thing you do is sexually assault someone. That still says a lot about you as a character, right?
It's funny that you say that, Ida. That was one of those it's funny. That's funny you said that because I saw Willow was ranting about that book the other day, and I was like, damn, that's and again, it's a very sensitive subject. I get that. I'm not saying like it's look, I'm not trying to say like, oh, it should be done gratuitously because that's realistic. I'm not trying to say that. What I'm trying to get at is like, I don't know. It sometimes gets kind of frustrating when people get offended by how shocking it is. It's like, well, yeah, it's kind of meant to be that way,
I mean, but then there's like also the question like, are you shocking to to show people that this is bad, or are you just shocking to provoke a reaction and ideally sell stuff, right? Like, is this
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
is this just provocation, or are you actually making a deeper point?
I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I always feel like the one that really, I'll try to be wary with spoilers, but the one that I really thought was really interestingly done was how Marlon James did it in Black Leopard, Red Wolf anyway. Because it's like, it's not only that he like depicts acts of sexual violence, he makes you feel it. Like you sense it with all of your, sensory, like you smell it, you hear it, you see it. It's, but it makes it much more disturbing. And you see in real time how it really fucks up somebody's psyche. I don't really want to get into it because that's a I don't want to go ranting about that book again. But it's it's I wish more fantasy authors had the balls to do that kind of thing. But
I mean, that's like an interesting thing. How so much of sort of like fantasy discourse, in particular, is in this weird cushioned bubble, where I'm like, if you ever read any like literary fiction out there, you'd be shocked. Like and that's how the things like you read Marlon James. Like I haven't read like Leopard Red Wolf, but I've read Brief History of Seven Killings, and I've read John Crow's Devils, and I've read Book of Night Women, and those are not
yeah, Brief History of Seven Killings
reads.
That is not a cozy novel by any stretch of the imagination. It's really fucked up, honestly.
Yeah, and I've read like a lot of like Thomas Pynchon. I've read a lot of Cormac McCarthy and all kinds of other authors of that like sort of like larger areas. I would like discourse in like fantasy circles is oftentimes really, really sort of like cordoned off and protected in a lot of ways. Where I'm like, you guys like. You don't know what you're talking about when you're talking about sexual violence in literature. let's just put it that way.
I thought Bookborn's video on like violence against women was interesting because I thought that was
good.
Video.
That was pretty good. I don't think she went far enough, but that's usually my problem with like Bookborn. But like the point that she made that a lot of people will excuse like gratuitous sexual violence with, it's historical. That is a bullshit argument, especially because it's still just sexual violence against women when, like, traditionally a lot of sexual violence is used as a weapon of war, and that means you're using it also very much against men in a lot of ways, right? Like, and that is something that gets like overlooked because men writing about that still find it easier to write, and there's something to sort of like be explored there, right? Like, if men find it easier to write sexual violence perpetrated on women than sexual violence perpetrated on men, that says something about our society and about,
Well, that's the thing with Black Leopard Wolf. A lot of the sexual violence is against men, which I also think is interesting because, again, a lot of fantasy authors don't do that. Don't talk about
of course, of course, and that's just like historically, like if you want to be historical, then that's kind of what you need to have in there, right?
Yeah, no, for some reason, I guess when you're in the midst of battle, it's kind of like that scene in Blood Meridian when the natives show up and just slaughter everybody. It's like, yeah, for some reason they just are like, oh, we're not only just going to murder them, we're gonna rape them as they're dying. You're like, damn, that's fucked up. But the whole violence and sex thing goes together.
Well, you might be interested by stuff happening in books 2 and 3 of the Molassen Book of the Fallen, amongst others.
Yeah, I've heard Dead House Gates gets really fucking sad.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it.
Yeah, I was about to say, some of the stuff like Ramsey did in the books would never have made it on television. Like, not at all. It is really twisted. But yeah, no, it's But yeah, no, it's funny though, Ida, that you brought that up about Alchemized, because Willow was talking about that recently and how bad it was. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't really look like a book that interests me anyway, so probably gonna avoid it. But yeah, that was pretty funny, honestly, or not funny, but it was just funny you brought that up.
I know that Willow Heath really hated Alchemized. I haven't read it, so I have no opinion on it. It's like whatever, right? It's a Harry Potter fan fiction. Why would I read that?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like there's also a sense in some fantasy novels it almost feels like people are fetishizing it, and you're like, that's weird, like, ew, But alas. And again, I that's another thing that kind of bothers me about this kind of discussion as well, is like, sometimes people act out trauma in really ugly ways, and I find sometimes people just kind of either don't want to talk about it or don't like to like look at it, but it's a thing. And you see that in stuff like, Abercrombie and Martin too. So it's not like they're just going around shocking people just for the sake of it. Which, again, I'm going to save all that for my video on, Grim Dark and all that. So, I won't say too much more.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying they don't go too far from time to time. I mean, I think Martin definitely does. I mean, when you have dogs like sexually assaulting a lady, allegedly, this is kind of like meant as like a rumor. That's where I'm like, okay, that's a bit I don't know. That doesn't sit right with me. But then again, I did hear recently in Israel they were using dogs to sexually assault people. So reality is a strange thing, and I don't even know if that's true. But I did read some like documents from people who were there, so maybe it did.
Yeah.
Joe has just said he finished Planetary. Well, okay. What did you think, Joe? I guess I shall finish it tomorrow then, because he just finished it. And I'm like, well, I guess I gotta get my act in order. I don't really like the word grimdark. I think it's kind of a frustrating. It's kind of a limiting term, I think. But it's all marketing at the end of the day. Of course. I think of Song of Ice and Fire and the First Law are good reads in terms of that gritty fantasy.
I would
Um,
argue that, the Land Fit for Heroes trilogy by Richard K. Morgan. Be aware of the fact that Richard K. Morgan is a massive turf, and so I totally get if you don't want to give him money. I bought those books before he made that plane, so I have them. But
oh,
yeah, they are definitely
oh,
really well written by someone who does very much sort of like max out what you can do with the genre while still actually keeping a level of sincerity going.
let me think. I'd say Elric, but Elric's more like gothic dark fantasy than anything else.
I mean, Black Company is often seen as sort of like a precursor to Grimdark in a lot of ways, which I guess I can see where that is coming from.
Bears leg on some levels, so I don't really think of it as grimdark. But it is very grotesque.
I mean,
Uh,
yes, what's his face? Yeah, Mark Lawrence, that first Burning Empire, Broken Empire trilogy is definitely grimdark, but it's also really bad. So I wouldn't recommend that.
Dark Star, even though I think calling it grimdark is kind of, again, I just don't like the term. But if that's a good gritty fantasy. I think it does like surrealism, but also with like a gritty fantasy. Well, the first one does anyway. Moonwitch Spider King is more of like a proper like fantasy epic. Um, More magical realist, even though I don't really like that term either. I fucking hate marketing terms, honestly. Hate it. Hate them.
I mean, magical realism is not a marketing term. It's like a specific sort of like literary tradition, which is mostly based in Latin America, and so
Oh yes, if you like comics, there is Monstrous by Marjorie Liu. I've only read the first couple volumes, but that's really good.
isn't basically Berserk the #1 grimdark comic?
Yeah, it is. It's the darkest comic I've ever read. Berserk definitely goes on there. I forgot all about Berserk, honestly. I don't know how I did that, but yeah. That's about it in terms of that. There's also son of a bitch. Beyond Redemption's pretty good if you want something a little weirder.
Oh yeah, that's the Michael Fletcher, right?
Though I will admit there were parts of that book that genuinely made me put it down and want to take a shower. So I mean, if that speaks to its quality, to my money, you're doing something right if you if you're doing that. Because good God, there are some grotesque moments in that.
I haven't read it. I've heard good things about it, and I've also heard that it's really bad if you're German.
Yeah, you do have a bunch of German words.
Yeah, by doing him badly, I guess.
I don't know. There's not really much else I can think of at the moment. I mean, Anna Smith Sparks' book, A Sword of Bronze and Ashes, but again, it's kind of like Black Leopard, Red Wolf. It's so weird and surreal. I find calling it grimdark would be a disservice.
I mean, if we're talking about the sort of like Abercrombie thing, I do really believe that like The Steel Remains is the book to read in that regard, because that turns all of those things up to 11, and oh boy.
I mean, I guess you can read The Black Tongue Thief, even though I thought that was a stupid book. Though I think Between Two Fires is a lot better in that regard. So, though Between Two Fires is more of a horror novel.
Yeah. I don't know.
But yeah, no, I don't really like grimdark as a term. I think it's kind of dumb, honestly.
Yeah.
Didn't you make a video about how it should die a slow and painful death like a few years
Yes.
ago? Because I remember that. I remember that video.
Yeah, I
watched
that
it and
video.
found it very entertaining.
At that time, I was just mostly annoyed by people going like, "Well, I'm reading grimdark because I'm an adult person, so I don't need to read all of this happy traditional fantasy." I'm like, there was this like one thing that like Steve Talks Books had like this longer video with like a lot of different people talking about, and someone was like, "Well, I want my grimdark fantasy to be not like Lord of the Rings. I want actions to have consequences. When people get into battle, they get wounded and they can't come back whole again." And I'm like, Let me tell you about Frodo of the Nine Fingers and the Rings of Power.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Kagan. If you want like proto grimdark, I mean, Conan the Barbarian kind of lays it a little bit. It's more sword and sorcery than anything else. And Kagan the Damned from Jonathan Mayberry is a lot of fun, even though I have kind of the same like problem I have with a lot of fantasy, which is that like sexual assault is handled really badly in that book. So, there you go. Aside from that, it's a good romp.
Mm.
Also, it combines the Cthulhu mythos in there too. So if you're interested in that, yeah, Kagan the Damned. It's a fun book.
Oh, if there's one thing about Cthulhu you can say, that it is definitely grim and dark.
Yeah, I think Between Two Fires is probably the best book I've read from Buhlman. I think it's his most I want to say it's his most controlled book, because I do think it kind of spins its wheels a little bit. And the climax is probably the biggest problem with the book. But I do think it's his like best. Like, I actually cared about what was going on. And there's some really great like atmospheric writing, and yeah, it feels biblical at points, which is that's always nice.
Yeah, because the Bible is pretty grim dark in parts.
Yeah. Or even the Odyssey, for that matter. I mean, I was just reading it last night, and there was a Cyclops that like just gets annoyed at these guys for breaking into his house. He's like, I'm gonna just kill them and eat them. Doesn't get more grimdark than that.
Well, I mean,
He gets his eye poked out, because
Look, it's castle doctrine, but in like a Bronze Age way.
I love the Cyclops scene. It's really great. It's probably my favorite part of the Odyssey.
Yeah, here's the thing: like Polyphemus definitely just executed castle doctrine. He did nothing wrong.
Yeah, it's pretty fucked up though. He describes how he like smashed them and ate them, and he like describes the blood splatter. I'm like, oh, that's disgusting.
Yeah, true. Well,
no one comes off looking that good in the in the Odyssey, honestly.
No. Everyone's a piece of shit in that one.
I'm curious to see how Nolan does it when he comes out with the Odyssey adaptation, but we'll see.
Yeah, you're right. He's also wet.
Is the wettest thing we've seen, and from the standpoint of water, to quote our president. It's like, that's not even like top 10 dumbest things he's ever said. That's how sad at our country's gotten at this point.
The Pope is weak on crime and nuclear weapons.
Oh my God.
His key competencies: crime and nuclear weapons. That's the job of the Pope.
Like, yeah, he's the Pope. He's not a fucking government leader. What are you talking about? I don't want to explain the joke, honestly.
Well, I did find out that the Vatican did never sign the treaty against proliferation of nuclear weapons. So maybe he's pretty strong on nuclear weapons.
That is true. He does have memorable quotes. I don't know if they're any good, but they are memorable.
Well, he has all the words.
Yes, he has the best words even.
Yeah, I know. All of them. He may not know how to spell them, but he does have them.
When someone says I have the best words, I don't know if you take that guy seriously. But we voted him in twice, so what do I know? I didn't personally, but who cares about that?
Yeah, that's the problem. It's like, some people in your country did vote him in, and now everyone else has to suffer.
You read any of the Jenny Wirtz books, Raph? Did they sound any interesting to you?
I have not yet, but it is going to happen. I have pre-ordered them because they are only now slowly getting audiobooks. So I'm waiting for enough Wars of Light and Shadow to accumulate for me to actually, dig in.
Yeah, I want to read To Ride Hell's Chasm because it's a standalone, but it's 700 pages though. It's insane.
Unfortunately, that one doesn't have an audiobook. Her
I'm trying to-
Cycle of Fire has all of the audiobooks, and Wars of Light and Shadow has the first 3 and the last 2. The
Hello,
last
Aaron.
2, yes. So it's a weird combination.
I like that.
I do like Megaton Pope, though. That's a very good title.
I keep thinking of like a Megaton like anime, where they or what are
Yeah.
those called? Like mech animes where they like it's about the kid
Yeah.
who wants to like fly the giant robots and he gets a chance to.
Yeah. I would like to be Megaton Pope. Sounds like a good job.
I mean, there is a comic from Robert Kirkman called Battle Pope, which is basically if the Pope was a superhero. Which I haven't read it, but I'm sure it's a lot of fun. Oh man, I didn't even realize that. I didn't even realize that Robert Fagles was dead, and he gets blurbs in this from Ted Hughes, the famous poet, who's married to Sylvia Plath. Saw how that ended up.
Well, Battle Pope, yeah. Well, Britton, it's almost midnight and my beer's running out. I think I might be slowly leaving this.
Yeah, I was thinking about
Wonderful.
winding down. It's starting to kind of slow down a bit over here.
Yeah, yeah. But you got all day left to do cool things.
Yeah, probably get a bunch of reading done and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. Next Sunday, if you do it, I won't be here.
All right, then. I don't know what I'm going to be doing next Sunday, but
now I'll be at the Rock Hard Festival. Dumb title, or what can you do?
it's like
Also,
Jay
it's
Butler with the Witchy War. I'm like, that's a dumb title, but what are you going to do?
yeah, well, and that's kind of the problem. If you are outside of time, you kind of can't really retire, I guess. But then again, neither can Jesus. That's kind of the problem. But yeah, so next week I'll be at a festival doing heavy metal things on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday because of, Pentecost, which I'm sure you will all celebrate in one way or another. I mean, you got to learn to speak in tongues, don't you? I mean,
Yeah.
Not me personally, but
I have not. I'm still kind of. I'll admit I've never really been all that interested in Good Omens in terms of like Neil Gaiman projects, but I heard a lot of people got mad at the director and like harassed her off Twitter or something like that.
Gaiman harassed the director of Twitter. That sounds very much like Gaiman is still trying to become like a nice guy again.
Well, it wasn't Gaiman doing it. It was just fans harassing her because apparently it was bad. But again, I don't really give a shit about the Good Omens thing.
I do like the novel. It is, I think, a fairly solid novel. It, unfortunately, is very much tied to a specific time, so a lot of the jokes kind of work less well if you sort of like, in that regard, it kind of gets harder to parse, I think. Well, I mean, to be fair, the band Witch Hazel, which is a very Christian heavy metal band that I recently saw and that I will see on Pentecost at the Rock Hard Festival, they have an album called Pentecost, and they're very Christian, and they have like big crosses, and they, you know, they're really cool though. If you like your heavy metal, very melodic and slightly folky British and Christian, like serious Christian, like not just like making fun or anything. They are very much true believers.
Yeah, it's it's a strange thing, honestly. But yeah, good luck at that metal festival, Ralph.
Oh, it's gonna be nice. It's at it's an amphitheater, so you can sit down and watch all the bands, and or go down to like a mosh pit if you feel like it.
Don't get hurt, Ref. Don't do that. Christian metal is always kind of weird because I always think of like Christians as not liking metal.
There's like a lot of like very extreme metal, like death metal stuff that is very Christian for some reason. I mean, obviously you have your 80s glam rock bands like Striper, and Alice Cooper is a born again Christian for a long time now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I mean, like Alice Cooper's a Christian. I mean, I don't know if he's heavy metal, but
You know, he has
he plays a lot of golf now. Hey, it's good. Golf's good.
Dude's in his 80s. I think he can play golf. I know another guy who's in his 80s who's playing golf, and I'm pretty sure Alice Cooper is the better Christian at this point.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It does sound like a pretty, like Jesus. That is kind of the first thing Jesus did, and then he multiplied all the wine at the wedding.
Yeah, at the wedding in Canaan. Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, if I had superpowers like that, it makes you very popular at a party if you can multiply beer and pizza, right? All right, Britton, I'm gonna let you wind this down. I'm gonna go and get some rest.
All right, well, you rest well, Ref. I am probably going to take off myself. This was fun. Thank you to everyone who showed up for the show.
See you.
Well, see you whenever I do this next time, which will probably be next week, but we'll see.
See you
Take
around.
care, everyone.
Yeah, cheers.